Okay, what we're talking about today is peace officers, and we're going to talk about what the difference is between a peace officer and a law enforcement officer, because there is a difference. Law enforcement officers operate in commerce, and peace officers are common law. And peace officers keep the peace. Peace officers have an oath of office. When a peace officer is doing his duty to keep the peace, he's operating in his official capacity. A law enforcement officer can be a peace officer. Many law enforcement officers also operate as a peace officer. But a peace officer, the minute he puts on his law enforcement officer hat to give out a speeding ticket, he just walked away from his oath of office and his all of his duties as a peace officer. Now he's operating in his private capacity. If they are administered by persons in their private capacity or not duly authorized, they're quorum non judice and void. Okay, so that's talking about those. But the point is that same thing applies with a peace officer. If he is in his private capacity, he is not operating in his official capacity, and when he becomes a law enforcement officer or does law enforcement activities, he is in his private capacity. When there's no breach of the peace officer is not acting in his official capacity, but is instead acting in his private capacity. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. Ignorance of the law does not excuse misconduct in anyone, least of all a sworn officer of the law. And when that peace officer decides he wants to do that speeding ticket, they can certainly do speeding tickets on truck drivers and bus drivers, people that are involved in commerce. But if they try and do it on someone that's not involved in that, then he's personally liable. Color of office. They're operating under color of office, pretense of official right to do an act by one who has no such right, when the office does not confer on him any such authority. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's operating under color of office, and it's color of law, and it's a federal felony, and it's all sorts of things. And there's a YouTube profile by a guy by the name of Mark Posse, who's a former satanic priest. He's got some YouTube videos about natural law, and they're very good. The guy's brilliant. And one of the things he says is that all atrocities in history were committed by order takers. And an order taker is a peace officer, or actually a law enforcement officer, that is operating in his private capacity, that's too stupid to know about lawful commands and the fact that he's been given unlawful commands, and so he's just doing what he's told. He's an order taker, and he's personal. And there's people like that are responsible for all the atrocities in history. Some of the pillars of Satanism, and you're going to find out that they're all over the place, that we're actually a satanic society. Judgment Day has got to be coming. It is coming. Anyways, pillars of Satanism is survival is the highest pillar of Satanism. Moral relativism, no such thing as right or wrong. We just make up what is right or wrong. Social Darwinism, certain classes of society think they are more fit to rule. Boy, that's the truth. All of these elites postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless. More pillars of Satanism. Eugenics, elite get to determine who lives or dies. Boy, that's the truth. Order followers, we were already talking about, responsible for all the atrocities in history, just follow orders without thinking about whether it's a lawful order or not. Willing slaves. Moral relativism. 2/3 of the people believe in moral relativism. Truth is relative. It's what we decided today. Tomorrow it might be something else. And these are all pillars of Satanism, and when we go through my presentation on corruption in the courts, 2, 3, and 4, we're gonna talk more about all of the Satanism that's going on nowadays. Some examples of order takers is World War II war crimes tribunals from the Nazis. All the Nazis claimed that they were just following orders. They thought that was going to get them off the hook, but it didn't. Most of them suffered death by hanging, and the ones that didn't spent the rest of their life in jail, and some of them are hunted to this day. And the Vietnam War, the My Lai massacre, where the U.S. Troops went in and killed off some village, and they were personally held responsible, and they were convicted of murder. And the Amistad, Any restraint, however slight, upon another's liberty to come and go as one pleases constitutes an arrest. These order takers seem to think that they can sit there and tell you that this is a detention. Well, it's not a detention, it's an arrest. And they think that they can get out of responsibility by calling it a detention. And they can't. And one day they're going to be held accountable. They might get away with it today, and they might get away with it tomorrow, but the judgment day is coming. Order takers, an illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has a right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force, as in self-defense. And there's lots of examples of this kind of stuff going on. If the guy that stops you on the highway to give you a ticket for speeding, if you're not involved carrying passengers or property for hire, then he just breached the peace. One may come to the aid of another being unlawfully arrested, just as he may where one is being assaulted, molested, raped, or kidnapped. Thus it is not an offense to liberate one from the unlawful custody of an officer, even though he may have submitted to such custody without resistance. And so, again, order takers are sitting there just following orders because they're too stupid to figure out that whether it's a lawful command or not. Similarly, a person cannot be convicted of resisting a peace officer in the execution of his duty unless the officer was acting strictly within the limits of his power and duty. If the officer makes an unlawful arrest, then there's a common law right to resist that arrest. And that's found in the Police Manual of Arrest, Seizure, and Interrogation by Roger Salhaney. That's a Canadian judge. And so that applies in Canada as well as the U.S., any common law country. And there's most countries in the world are common law. Many police organizations deliberately screen out higher intelligence individuals during their testing process. And there's a good example of Jordan versus City of New London. City of New London is a city in Connecticut. Jordan was a guy that had a master's degree, and the City of New London refused to hire him because he scored too high on the test. And he sued him, and he took it to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Look it up on the internet. I found it. And they basically said that it's not a good idea, but they have every right to go and do that kind of stuff. So your only remedy is really to sue them. And if you're in these UN de facto courts, your chances of getting justice are slim to none. There's lots of YouTube videos about police assaulting people and for jaywalking. The Obama administration is said to be requiring officials to sign a document saying that they'll follow orders to fire on Americans. And the wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of layfolk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as misuse of a military uniform. That's found in the Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933. That's the Concordat that was signed between Hitler and the Vatican. And it's interesting to note that Canada and the United States and a whole bunch of other countries have signed on to that. And what that's essentially saying is that anybody with a military uniform is working for the Vatican. That's exactly what it's saying. And if you think about it, in the Old West, what military uniform did the sheriff have? He had a star, and that's it. And if you in the Old West, the judges would have a business suit, and the sheriff would have a star. That's at common law. That's the way it's done. You have all these people running around in these military uniforms. At common law, there's no military uniforms, and they just, judges have a business suit. The judges don't have one of these monkey suits that you see, these black robes that these bail priests wear nowadays in the courts. That are they're just they're agents of the Vatican is what they are. And if you go through the presentation on corruption in the courts 3 and 4, that's what I cover. I talk about that stuff. So you might want to look at it when it comes out. It's going to come out pretty soon. Under Posse comitatus, we have a duty to come to the aid of peace officers. The Posse comitatus is the power or force of the county, the entire population of a county above the age of 15. What an awesome power! And I mean, what other power do you need if you have a true posse? And that's common law. And so we have a duty to come to their aid, and so we need to let them know that we intend to fulfill our duty. And if you see those old Western movies when they round up the posse, well, that's what it's all about. And there's also court cases. A refusal on the part of an individual lawfully called upon to assist the officer in putting down a riot is indictable. And that's an Old English court case. And again, we have a duty to come to the aid of peace officers. And so we need to accept our responsibility, and along with rights come responsibilities, and we need to honor that and let our peace officers know that, and they appreciate it. It's a lot of times it's the peace officers that are opposing these infringement on our rights because like the gun rights and all the rest of it, because they know that it's honest people that'll come to their aid if they have the ability to. Many peace officers understand their duty and are organizing to educate each other about their duty. Oath Keepers is a perfect example. You go on Facebook, they openly say that they will have no duty to obey an unlawful command and will not follow orders to seize guns. And there's YouTube videos and Facebook groups about it. There's also another American Citizens and Lawmen's Association that's based in Phoenix. And that was Jack McLam was involved in. He was a really good guy. He's passed away now. And there's Sheriff Richard Mack, another really good guy. And they're all peace officers. We need people to approach the peace officers in our location, let them know that we understand our duty to come to their aid, and let them know that we intend to fulfill that duty. Along with rights come responsibilities. So just because you have rights doesn't mean you don't have responsibilities. There's always responsibilities. And common law is in a way, it's a lot more severe than this commercial law that you see, you know, with these judges and everything. Many so-called peace officers are in fact not keeping the peace, but are in fact breaching the peace with their unlawful arrest in support of their revenue-generating activities for their boss. The reason for the initial detention, speeding and running a red light, are not breaches of the peace. That's a perfect example, and that's a Texas court case. And so you know, it's interesting that that went to the I think that looks like it went to the Court of Appeals. But yeah, don't get me going. But anyways, that's a Texas court case. The speed signs. This is Texas statute. Speed signs. The department shall erect and maintain the highways and roads of the state appropriate signs that show maximum lawful speed for commercial vehicles, truck tractors, truck trailers, truck semi-trailers, and motor vehicles engaged in the business of transporting passengers for compensation for hire. So it's commercial. That's the only ones that applies to. And these hired thugs, these law enforcement officers, are going out and breaching the peace and assaulting you by giving out that speeding ticket. And we just cave right in. And so we need to stand up to it. And corporate names. This is taken from Arizona Administrative Code. Corporate names most consist of letters of the English alphabet, Arabic numerals, and or combination thereof. And letters of the English alphabet will be used in uppercase, capital letters only. No distinction as to typeface or font is recognized. In other words, it's a corporation. And that's the only thing they really have jurisdiction over. And that's the ones, these LEOs, law enforcement officers, those are the ones that they're supposed to be stopping. But they go and stop anybody and everybody. And we need to train them. And it takes more than just me to be doing it. And this is Texas Administrative Code. It basically says the same thing. It's entity names may consist of letters of the Roman alphabet, Arabic numerals, and certain symbols capable of being reproduced on a standard English language typewriter or combination thereof. Only uppercase or capital letters with no distinction as to typeface or font will be recognized. And again, that's corporations. And so they go and presume certain things, and their Vatican venture buddies help them out. And don't get me going. So we'll talk about that with some of the upcoming videos that I'm going to upload. This is Rule 52, alleging a corporation. An allegation that a corporation is incorporated shall be taken as true unless denied by the affidavit of the adverse party, his agent or attorney, whether such corporation is a public or private corporation and however created. So they just presume you're one of their corporate slaves and put the burden on you to try to defend it. And it's just nothing but a kangaroo court. And don't get me going. And we're going to talk about corruption in the courts coming up. And This is all of the stuff that's going on, or some of it. This is found in United States Code, and the reason United States Code applies is because all of this stuff falls under UNIDROIT. The courts and the motor vehicles all fall under UNIDROIT, which is the UN. And Texas is not listed on the UNIDROIT statute, so anything that happens in Texas is really federal, and therefore United States Code applies. Section 31, the term motor vehicle means every description or carriage or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes. And used for commercial purposes on the highways and the transportation of passengers or property. And that's what the definition says. At common law, the general rule, arrest could not be made without a warrant for an offense less than a felony except for a breach of the peace. At common law, an arrest could not be made of a person charged with a misdemeanor except on a warrant of a magistrate unless it involved a breach of the peace, in which case the offender might be arrested by any person present at its commission. In other words, that peace officer really has no more power than anybody, me or you. And anybody can arrest someone for the same thing that peace officer can arrest for. But that's why we need to, the peace officer is the guy that's out in front of everybody, and we need to back him up and support him. It must not be forgotten that there can be no arrest without due process of law. An arrest without warrant has never been lawful except in those cases where the public security requires it, and this has only been recognized in felony and in breaches of the peace committed in the presence of the officer. So again, it must not be forgotten that there can be no arrest without due process of law. An arrest without warrant has never been lawful except in those cases where the public security requires it, and this has only been recognized in felony and in breaches of the peace committed in the presence of the officer. And again, that's the only time. In Alberta, Canada, they have peace officer written all over their uniforms and all of their law enforcement agencies, and that's actually deceptive because 99% of what they do has absolutely nothing to do with keeping the peace. I've been assaulted and kidnapped numerous times by these hired thugs, and the ones that I was forced to deal with are in fact pigs. I have never in my life breached the peace, but these pigs described herein have constantly assaulted me, kidnapped me, and falsely imprisoned me, and their judicial whore pigs aid and abet them. And there's going to be a upcoming private information share, or I should say a video on this Canada Border Services Agency pigs. Anyways, the assaults, the kidnappings, the false imprisonment are not unique to Canada, but also happens extensively in America, and it is because the United Nations UNIDROIT Treaty, because it is always related to traveling in vehicles, which falls under UNIDROIT, or the de facto United Nations courts that fall under UNIDROIT, and we're going to talk about that in Corruptions in the Courts 3 and 4. And so those are upcoming videos that I'm going to put up, so I hope you're looking forward to them. And we're going to go through some of this stuff. Anyways, this is all related to this stuff. That's because of this UN treaties. Remember, the founding fathers say stay out of treaties. Anyways, PIG is an acronym. It stands for Persons in Government Who Intend to Breach the Trust and Perjure Their Oaths. And that's exactly what it stands for. And there's a trust because, remember, the courts have said that the Constitution creates a trust, and so these pigs intend to breach the trust, and they intend to perjure their oath. So that's 2 felonies that they're committing. Anyways, the U.S. Attorney General is the highest law enforcement officer in the United States. His hired thugs at the so-called border keep telling me that they do not recognize state citizens. The Texas State Police told me that I'm listed in sovereign in their system. Therefore, obviously, Texas does recognize state citizens and sovereigns. I did not ask to be called a sovereign. All I said was that I'm not a low-life scumbag U.S. citizen slave. It was Eric Holder and his predecessors that criminally converted citizenship in America into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended with their unconstitutional 14th so-called amendment. So I'm just having to deal with it, and the office of the Attorney General of the United States is an unconstitutional delegation of authority as described in Corruption in the Courts 3. Eric Holder has accused all people in America who are claiming to be sovereign of being terrorists. Eric Holder knows that he's the one who's the real terrorist with his false flag operations, and this is taken out of Funk and Wagnall's dictionary of 1946. It says, terrorism is a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation, which is exactly what they're doing. And I guess what that makes Eric Holder is he's the biggest pig of them all. And so, you know, that's all I can say. It is my opinion that well over 90%, probably 99% or more of the people who work as peace officers are honest, hardworking people who are very patriotic and take their oaths of office very seriously, and many of them have not been properly trained, and many of them are under pressure to generate revenue, and the burden's on us to educate them. And the legitimate, lawful peace officers like Sheriff Richard Mack or Jack McLam, there's thousands of them out there. They're honest, hardworking people, and I don't want any of this to be reflected upon them. A true peace officer is glad that there are people like me doing the things that I do, because they know that their rights are disappearing too, and because of their position, they can't say anything. And so they are glad when people like me do this kind of stuff. And so that's a true peace officer. Upcoming events. We're going to have an upcoming event about the Canada border pigs. And we're going to have an upcoming event about courts, number 3, corruption in the courts, and corruptions in the courts, number 4. And we're going to have an upcoming event about fire the whores in Texas. Whores are judicial whores. And then we're going to have an upcoming event about the city of Fort Worth pigs and the city of Grand Prairie pigs. Now, that just because there's some of them in there that are pigs doesn't mean they're all pigs. And actually, I found that there's a lot of good, honest, hardworking people that work in the city of Fort Worth, and you know, I'm sure that Grand Prairie is the same way. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo, at the group called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I also have YouTube videos. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living, as you know, and you can send me an email for other copies of documents to engineerwin@gmail.com.